right, are we ready to get started? All right, so just to preface, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Krista Richardson. I am the archivist for the County of Prince Edward, and I have been with the archives and the library for 17 years, so quite some time, I know. All right. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming, firstly, although on this cold but beautiful day. You're supporting both the Historical Society and the archives, and Sandy and I are very pleased to see you and appreciate you coming out. Sandy and I are going to be speaking on cemeteries and things that we've learned about cemeteries over the years. Mine, of course, through books. Sandy's through more practical application, and probably, let's be honest, the more interesting aspect of cemeteries. So what's the difference between a graveyard and a cemetery? I, myself, often use them interchangeably, I believe. A graveyard is a place where the dead are buried or interred. And graveyards are often attached to churches, and they are also known as churchyards. Graveyards provide a place to visit deceased loved ones and honor their memory. But a cemetery offers a wide range of services, different interment options, grave maintenance, park-like settings. The term burial ground, however, usually applies to areas where ancient communities buried their dead. There are different types of burial sites. Undifferentiated sites were used for depositing the remains of explorers and voyagers along river routes. There's also small family plots that are now abandoned and usually range from size from 5 to approximately 20 graves. As settlements grew into towns and places of worship were developed, the dead would be buried within the church grounds. Traditions also developed, and still some that we carry on today. The bell of the church was rung during the last hours of life and after death in an effort to keep evil spirits at bay and to give the departing soul some advantage upon its way. Graves were laid facing east to west, with the head to the west, and all available spaces were used, with burials very close together and at times even on top of each other. This is actually a really interesting aspect that Sandy is going to get into even further. However, as the population grows into towns and towns grew into cities, many of the burying grounds became full. In some areas, it was a public health concern of overcrowding, and burial grounds began to be located outside of the town centers, or church grounds. This circumstance began the rural cemetery movement. As the setting changed, so did the outlook on the afterlife. It's during this time that we begin to see the more positive aspect of the afterlife and not all the doom and gloom. Outside the city or town limits, cemeteries were created into park-like settings. The rural cemetery was designed with a romantic vision based upon the English landscape and gardening. Nature was idealized and sought out. Cemeteries were designed to provide sanctuary, solitude, quiet, adornment, and beauty. It was common, especially on Sundays, for families to picnic in the cemeteries. One of the oldest markers found in Ontario was from 1790. That's not to say that earlier grave markers did not exist, but that is one of the earliest that's actually been found. Many of the graves would not have withstood the test of time and the weathering, right? As many of them were actually made of wood. Settlers' lifestyle was not conducive to elaborate burial practices. Small rural towns were fairly isolated, and the grave markers would be created by a family member who, in all likelihood, is not a professional carver, but more likely than not, a farmer, millwright, or similar life-sustaining profession. The type of stone used may also have contributed to the deterioration of the grave markers. The most common type used was a soft variety and did not stand up to weather particularly well. Rain, snow, fungus, and even just natural deterioration and neglect. These stones are actually pictures from Shadse's Cairns, their cemetery. And actually all of the stones that you're going to see, the majority of them are from Chatsy's cairns.
Where's that?
Just going towards Rose Hall, just on the outskirts of Wellington.
You can buy your wine there.
Right, yes, there you go, yeah.
Winery.
It's a winery,
Buy
yeah,
the wine
Chatsy's
and look at
cairns.
it.
One-stop shopping.
Lady gospel.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so the willow tree is usually a sign of sadness or mourning, but can also withstand much hardship. They're a sturdy and a steady tree that can survive even if you cut off many branches. A tree stands for life, and the sprouting stands for the everlasting. The tree trunk stands for the brevity of life, and the stone shaped like the tree stump. The clasped hands are symbolizing a final farewell. Often when one person has passed on, one is left behind, and looking at the cuffs, you can actually tell usually whether it was a man or a woman that has passed. It's kind of hard to tell, but in some of them, if you're actually looking at the stone, you can see somewhat of a feminine cuff versus that of a masculine, kind of indicating who actually passed away. The open book is often used on gravestones for a minister or a clergyman, or it can also mean teacher. And it's sometimes found on gravestones of very devoted religious people. The book's also said to represent a person's good deeds and accomplishments, as if they're being recorded by the afterlife. A bird, a messenger of peace, messenger of God. Now, the most common that are found on gravestones are usually doves. The broken chain or link is used to symbolize the loss of a family member, farewell to the earthly existence. And if there's 3 links, it's also representative of the IOOF organization as well.
Which is?
Independent Order of the Foresters. Yes. It's actually
Oddfellows.
Oddfellows. I'm sorry. Sorry. You're right. Oddfellows, pardon me. And it's actually really interesting. If you are looking at Canada versus United States, often a lot of these symbolism, it's quite similar or quite the same. However, depending on where you live, one of the symbols, now what was it? Was it the willow tree? Could be a symbol of an individual who lived from Delaware. I don't know. I don't know why. But yeah, it's really interesting when you actually really look into these symbols.
Oh, is that the one you had with one of the hands?
Is it the clasp?
Yes,
yes.
And it said it represented one of the Indian tribes in Delaware?
Yes.
So that's, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that's what that was Delaware, maybe, yeah.
So the hand pointing down and the hand pointing up, hand meaning pointing up to heaven, or the hand pointing down meaning that God or the afterlife has come and basically retrieved you from earth. And you see these intricate, like I'm sure if you really look into it, these all mean something as well. Mm-hmm. And see the links, the rings, excuse me, the links and the rings, like of course there's all like a lot more to it. So if you put all 3 symbols together, you can really actually see some things that are like really in depth.
What's the timeline or time range for all these?
So what you're seeing is the majority, I would say from like the 1820 to the 1830s. That's when a lot of these symbols, like there's different motifs. So there's like the classical revival, and then there is like the flower, there's the hand, and there's the animal, and then there's the angel. So those are kind of like the classic symbols that I'm focusing on. And they're all within like 18, 20, or 30. They all seem to have like similar motifs or like a similar type of pattern during that time. And what's interesting as well is that there was one individual who really delved quite deep into the information of why like this classical revival and why the Greeks and why the Romans were like influenced. And they said that during that time, of course, the democratic process, like the history of Canada itself, which I was like, that's quite amazing, really, you know, that would influence. I mean, I was quite amazed and blown away by it. But yeah, it really can get quite in depth, and yeah, that things that you wouldn't obviously think of, or at least I didn't. Yeah. And the horse. This one I kind of went back and forth on. The horse represents good. A white horse represents good, while a black horse represents evil. However, in a spiritual sense also, a horse is also a sign of good luck. So, and of course, I mean, there's also just the simplistic fact that maybe the person's into equestrian, you know, they're horse lovers. I mean, there's also these sentimental aspects and values that can also not necessarily be, theorized in a person's afterlife. And the palm tree, same, of course, victory, rejoicing, the afterlife. Okay, and this is just kind of a segue into Sandy's. But this is actually a view of Ferguson Street, of course, looking towards Glenwood Cemetery. And I just love, I don't know, there's just something about that poster that I absolutely love.
Those are the spirea bushes that are no longer there. They were there when in the turn of the last century. And there are pictures, and we've been receiving postcards, old postcards that were of Glenwood in 1910 and 1915, and when it was in its glory. And they're beautiful pictures. We have some colorized. I have one on my slide deck too. But she had the garden, the cemetery in there at the time was a female, and she had the gardens just were spectacular. And that was a row of spirea. And we've got one spirea there now, and I'd like to get more, and I would like to try and replicate it. But we've had a little bit of a shift in the spring water, and it's wetter now than when she was doing her work back the turn of the last century. So maybe they won't survive, but we're going to try and do that, because it was really beautiful. And next. You want me to push that?
No, you're good, Sandy. I just need you to get have your off camera a little
you
bit.
want to see me. You don't want this on. They're taping. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for using Glenwood's picture.
So now that I've bored you, I'm going to give you off to Sandy, which is why we're all here, and I love you for it.
Very good. Chris and I get along really well. She's just a good researcher. Okay, so my name is Sandra Lashford, and I'd like to talk to you about cemeteries. And I also am the president of the Historical Society, so I'm pushing my historical publications over there, and we have a lot more upstairs on another table that you should look at before you go. They're interesting. I am also the chair of the Built and Cultural Heritage Committee, that is the municipal committee, the omnibus committee, where cemeteries have been tucked in as there. Because I was always on the chair and very active in the cemetery municipal committee, but when they omnibus in, I got my feet right in there too to be it. So this is Glenwood, and this is on a Sunday on Decoration Day in about 1910, we think. And all the families came, and if you can, the detail in the back, there are families sitting next to the on the graves where they came to visit their families on Decoration Day. And it was really common for them to bring their children and come, and you'd sit and just have a good afternoon celebrating the lives of the people in the cemetery. So they were, believe it or not, a lot more accepting of death and rejoicing in that life. And not being, we think of Victorians as being very stiff and Queen Victoria wore her black for the rest of her life. But a lot of them did not do that. They didn't follow her molds. They would celebrate the life and come. So we encourage people to come to cemeteries because we think it's a really great place to commemorate the life and enjoy it there. So, okay, my first slide. Okay, this is present. So this is like what we have done with now. I took it on a beautiful fall day, as you can see. And we have rolling hills. And I want you to remember that we have rolling hills, because this will play a part down the road when we go to the future and the present of some other cemeteries. But that's a very good feature. Next one. Thank you. All right, so I thought, what is the purpose of a cemetery? And Krista went over it, and I really, I should tell you, I never was involved with cemeteries until about 2009, and Roger Bryant was at Glenwood when I went there, and they asked me to come and do beautification, because I like doing gardens, and I had gardening, I had some skill at that. The plants seem to live fairly well. So I said, sure, I'll come and do that. I'd love to do the flower beds and all that. And suddenly I was chair. So I'm just telling you, if anybody says to you, you want to come and garden, be very leery, because those geraniums become everything in the world. And so then I had to delve in, because I was essentially doing deviant behavior was the studies I worked in for my career, and then I went on to doing brain research and had nothing to do with this. So when I went into it, I said, well, I better read everything, because I have no idea. I know you bury the body, but there's got to be more to it than that, right? And there is. And it is much more complex than a lot of people think. So, and then I thought, what is the purpose of the cemetery? I mean, the municipality has 57, it has already inherited 57 because of the law. And so we really should be thinking about what we should do with this. How are we going to manage these? What's the importance? What are we trying to do? So I got the protect the physical health of the people of the community, was I thought one role, because Glenwood was founded because they were running out of space in the church cemeteries, and they were fearful that if they had another cholera pandemic, where would they bury the dead? Because in those days, when a pandemic came, it really would mean a lot of deaths could occur. And so they searched around and they formed Glenwood as a community cemetery, so they would have the room and have the protection from having bodies where they could bury them, and that's a protection from the health. It's a health issue, and it still remains to this day as a critical part of what we do with the human body when we pass away, and doing it in a good manner and getting the body in the right level in the ground and treating it respectfully is a very important part of that. And many of the rules and regulations that we have to follow stem from that aspect of it. But that's one part. It's preserving the records of the lives lived, and remember this because we'll come up back to it again. So we have to have the death certificate, we have to have a cremation certificate, we have to know that it's legit, and we record it. And we have to have our records available to the public, and in fact Glenwood's records are available online, and you can search them from anywhere. And that's been going on for a lot of years, because I got a grant to do that, because I think it's important to know where people are buried. And when you're looking it up and want to find out where your relatives are, you don't want to go to a dead end of, so to speak, and not be able to find them. and we actually often get that. So people will phone us and say, well, they're buried in the county. There are about 80 cemeteries here that have been recorded in 1993. Glenwood's one of them. So I need a little more advice. Where in the county, and I'll start questioning them. What road did they live on, and did they go to which church, and try and pin it down. But those records are very important. And unfortunately, many of the older cemeteries just don't have records. And we have headstones, and if headstones have survived, then we have good records from that. But there are no really good record keeping in these areas. Some have, and some private cemeteries are very good, but we have a lot of cemeteries across Ontario that are older than 1940s and 50s, and we have no idea. Because the monument will go, be crushed, or just rot away like the wooden cross, though it doesn't last a long time. And so then we don't know really where they are. We'll see it in an obituary in a paper, but we can't find where they really went up, where they were buried. So that is an issue, and it's an issue they're trying to resolve by having strict regulations on how we can do record keeping, and that's a really good thing. Provide a place for families to memorialize and celebrate their loved one. And I think for Casey Van Harlem is my cemetery manager at Glenwood, and I think for Casey and I, we are really trying to understand and meet the needs of the clientele, because you're coming to us at a period of time that's probably the worst time of your life, burying a loved one. And sometimes it's sudden and sometimes it isn't, but it's still a horrible time for you, and you're making these decisions. And so we want to provide an atmosphere and cooperation to help you do what you think you need to do, and we'll make that happen. And so that's something that, that part of that is the cemetery where we are trying to be comforting. It's a place of sanctuary where you can come. We have several people who come every day to visit the graves of their loved one. Every day. And there's one gentleman who comes twice and 3 times a day. And so when I'm there doing the flower beds and I like trimming trees, I see him and we wave and we talk and see how each other is keeping up. But that, we understand that's a need for some people, and so we want to provide that kind of atmosphere. So you're always welcome there, and we have developed the walking trails, so you can come and walk, and you can bring your dog and walk, but keep them on a leash. We just want you to enjoy the place, and it is a place of sanctuary for families, and be comfortable coming. And so that's one of our big goals. And it's a source of comfort. I love going there. When the vandalism in 2018, when they did 150 monuments, tipped them over, broke them, did all sorts of things, and I was away for the first time in many years on a long holiday, and I was in Yukon. I woke my husband up, 4 o'clock in the morning, the phone call came in. I said, get up, we're going back to New Brunswick immediately. And we flew, we drove back, but we got there. But the minute I hit the gates of Glenwood, I was comforted, because that's a comforting place for me. I love the trees, I love the streams, I love the way the setting is, and when I come in the gates, it's just like all the weight in the world is gone. And that's what I would like everybody to feel, because it's that way, it's that kind of a sanctuary, and that's what we're trying to create and what we do there. And I'd like every cemetery to be like that. So that's why I guess I talk about cemeteries a lot. Okay, Krista. All right, so we have, and a lot of people will not know, I know some of you do, and correct me if I make a mistake, you were in it longer than me. Care and Maintenance Trust Fund was put in place in 1955 by legislation, and this is a fund that you pay into when you buy your interment right. You pay a portion, 40% if it's a full body grave. And it goes into a trust fund that we can't touch. We get the interest out of that fund over time to maintain the cemetery, cut the grass, trim the trees, but we can't take it out and use it for ongoing operational costs. It was meant to be a safeguard for the cemeteries so that they would have money to be maintained in perpetuity, because that's what your interment rights right now say, in perpetuity. So that fund was very important, and it came in 1955, and unfortunately, some of the cemeteries didn't follow the rules. And they didn't put the money in there, and nobody supervising it. And so some cemeteries have a very, very, very small care and maintenance fund. So your interest payments are very small, and so then you're in trouble for doing the maintenance. And so that can be very problematic. And that's all across Ontario, that's all across Canada, and as far as I can see, it's about all across anywhere there's cemeteries. within Europe and across Canada and the United States, they all are dealing with that problem. Because the next part of the legislation is that if the cemetery can't maintain itself, it will be turned over to the municipality. And the taxpayers will take that on as maintaining the cemeteries. So, Glenwood is 62 acres. I have an operating budget of $250,000 a year. I'm a volunteer. We have 2 staff people. We operate it, we volunteer, we fundraise. So the municipality is in fear that if I ever die, and our board all dies, we're in trouble, because they're going to have to take over all operating costs for that big cemetery. But, and they're also having to do all the other cemeteries. So you will see a list here in a minute. They have about 56 or 57 cemeteries that have already been turned over. The volunteers have not been able to keep going. And it's a hard work running a cemetery. It's not a piece of cake. And it's really a lot of work. And so then there are 79 cemeteries in the county, so there's more coming in. And we know that there are some that are coming in. There's one going through the process now. And so that's going to be coming to the taxpayer. So I think we should be helping the municipality, develop a master plan about what are you going to do when all of these are coming in, and we have some already. How are we dealing with this? Do we have a master plan? Do we have a short-term plan? Do we have a long-term plan? And how can we make it less of a burden by making sure that we're doing the best we can to use the cemeteries, because they're not all full. Sometimes we get some in that have a lot of acreage around them, so we can still be selling lots and interment rights to people, and that will be an income to help us maintain them. So yes, Roger, I'm going.
For last year, but when you said coming in, can you
They're
explain
being
to the
turned,
people?
well, there's a process you have to go through. So, but they are going to turn them over to us. So they have to be signed over, and it's a formality to get them into the municipality.
Who signed over though? Like,
Well, the closing board has to tell us that they've closed. If it's a church board or a volunteer board, they have to send us in writing that we can no longer manage the cemetery, so we will turn it over to you. In some cases, if it's a church cemetery, the church could try to sell it to another entity, a personal or private entity. That did happen with Cherry Valley, but that's not often happening in the community, because cemeteries aren't big bucks. You're not going to make it nobody's going to become a really wealthy billionaire out of Hamlin Cemetery. The exception is Mount Pleasant in Toronto. $25,000 for a lot. Yeah. And our price list is over there. We don't get that much.
I was just going to ask, is it possible for a board to maintain its incorporation and carry on as a board, but still have the maintenance of the cemetery taken over by the municipality, or is it all or nothing?
I don't. What you would do is, if you needed money, you could apply. Are you in this municipality or somewhere else?
A neighboring one.
Okay. Well, in this municipality, if you are a volunteer board and you're still eager to do some there with the cemetery, and you want to continue that hands-on, you can apply to our municipality to get a grant. If it's finances that you're running low on, they do consider giving financial grants. So they give Glenwood a grant, and it's a grant to make sure that they don't get it. So that's the one, and then the Wellington Cemetery also has applied for that, so that we can continue on and try and build it up. And so with Glenwood, they gave us money, and then we're trying to build up the care and maintenance fund and make it a going business. Because if you notice in our pamphlets, we were the fourth cemetery in Canada that went as a green burial site and natural site. So we were fourth in Canada. I like to be leading the way and not trailing behind. So we're really watching what the clients want, what you want, as a choice of memorialization and burial options. And so we really keep up with that. So we've got the natural burial area, and it's very popular, and so we're doing well with that. And then we also adopted a pet area It's not for pets solely, you have to be a person to buy the interment lot for you, and then you can bring your pets with you. And so we have a niche, a whole niche wall columbarium devoted to that. We have a whole green area devoted to that. So we've covered all our bases. So if you want to bring your pets, we've got one fellow who's got 6 dogs from his lifetime, and now he's happy and that he can bring them with him. And it does make a difference. Some people just love, I've got a dog and a cat, so they're going to come with me now too. So we recognize what the customs have changed and what our consumers want, and we're trying to provide it. So if that's the kind of, and the BAO, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, who is our, monitors us, did push through for that option of the pet. It's in a separate section, and where no other interment rights have been sold before it was designated a human and pet burial area, because some people do not want to be buried with dogs nearby. So there are some new sections in there, and we were fortunate because we have a lot of land, so we can just go out, map it out, survey it, and plunk it in there quickly. Yeah.
I think there's some examples where cemeteries have made a deal with the municipality, and the big one is grass cutting. Because our cemeteries
Oh,
are
you
like
talk about
yours,
grass cutting,
and
right.
it kills us, we barely get through. But there are a couple of cemeteries I know that are smaller where the municipality does the grass cutting, and
Yeah.
that frees up the board then to be able to function.
And that maybe that municipality does that, but when it comes to ours, I think that they want to have more management. They still allow volunteers though, and work with volunteers to do stuff, to come in and paint maybe. I think there was one time when they painted the fence, the volunteers painted the fence, but the municipality has the total control, like the selling of plots and burials and that is all carried out by the municipality. That's through the municipality. But they do have an arrangement, so you can do that, yeah. Yeah, yes.
So, 2 questions with the Care and Maintenance Trust Fund. Curious, the money that is given, so money was supposed to be put aside, 30% for a full body burial. Does that money stay with that graveyard if the county has to take over that cemetery?
Yes.
Okay.
The money goes into a trust fund, and it is for that cemetery.
For that cemetery.
So if that cemetery comes to, like Mountain View Cemetery came to the municipality, was turned over by the Women's Institute, was actually doing it at that time. That fund comes over and it stays separate within our municipality's finances, so that if I want to know what's the state of the cemetery's care and maintenance fund, Mountain Views, they can pull it out of the budget, and any finances and tell me what it is.
Okay, so then that's my other point, is that public? Can you see how much?
Yes, oh yeah. Because you can just ask our auditor, treasurer for the municipality. You can ask and have that done. We looked at that, I think about 3 years ago. Our committee asked for that and we got it from, so.
That's, I'm just curious, the one cemetery that's closing in Wapoose, someone found documents from the
that's
60s where
the
perpetual care was paid for, but I don't know whether that money
it
actually went into the fund.
If you're dealing with another entity that's turning it over, you may have difficulty, but then they would go to the DAO, and the DAO has the authority to get it. So if somebody is reluctant to turn it over or doesn't disclose where, then they're in trouble with the DAO. And because they're really cracking down. They've hired a whole bunch of staff to bring it instant and spontaneous inspections, and they're cracking the whip, because this really needs to be done, because they shouldn't be able to take that money, because that's so illegal, really illegal, and so they can go after them, and maybe the municipality would too, yes, so. Yep.
Sandy, so as you're mentioning, all of the information, financial information on Glenwood is available on the CRA website, because you're a registered charity, correct? And,
So, I give it out, people are horrified. Every time the accountant, when they send it at year end, I say, I give it to everybody, bring me lots of copies. He said, well, I said, we're doing not, everything's okay,
Yeah.
so let it go.
and it's pretty transparent. The only thing that I was wondering about is the investment. So I think there's like $695,000 in the care and maintenance, or in one of the funds that are being held and it showed a loss because of $18,000 in interest in investment income. So how do you have to manage those investments? Do you have to have them in certain?
No, they don't have to say that, but there is the funeral, FDI, there's a trust we're working with, finance, it's not a finance company. It's a specialized, financial advisors that do only funeral homes and cemeteries. And so they're getting big interest rates, and they just do it all for us. And you can join that group, and we joined that group, and we're getting better interest rates out of that group.
It just seemed they did pretty bad in 2022.
Well, everybody did.
Everybody did.
I mean,
So I mean, I just wondered, so if there was a mandate, like the Bereavement Authority says you must only invest in certain types of stable bonds or investments.
No, that's never been the case, and I think that would be really tying the hands of people too much, but I would just like them to make sure that the people don't take it out and go for their vacations to Nevis.
Yeah.
Or put it all on taking down trees. Like, we have a big tree problem because they were 130 planted all at one time 130 years ago or 110 years ago, so they're all dying at the right time. So somebody says, oh, you spend too much money on trees. Well, 5 trees is $25,000 because they can't just fell it because there's all these monuments around, so they have to bring in the crane and I could see people thinking, I should, I need money for that, but you can't take it out of there for that. They are starting now to allow you to borrow from the care and maintenance fund, to build a columbarium or to open a new section. But they will not allow you to take it out from maintenance. You're stuck with trying to do that. And that's a really big sucker of the money. You talk the cutting grass, yeah. I figure if I had to do it out of house, I do it in-house with ours, but out of house it would be about $50,000 just for grass. Yeah.
Who manages the care and maintenance trust fund?
Then
Is it the government?
you go with Scotia Trust, or you pick a trust company that does manage funds. And the smaller the funds, you won't have many options, but so we go with, I can't remember.
Guaranteed funeral deposit?
That's it, guaranteed funeral deposit. They've got another rule, initial 2, but that's that group, yeah, it's gonna be. So, and they're very good, so ours, I've gone there, so. Yeah.
Well, we have to be careful, because the care and maintenance trust fund that is set up under the law is different than the care and maintenance trust funds that are run by the cemeteries. So there's 2, and they're often called almost the same thing. The stuff that goes to the government goes to the government.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get a choice about any of that.
No,
The stuff that you have in your own
but this is our own care
care
and
and
maintenance
maintenance
fund.
fund. Yeah, so there's the care and maintenance fund at the province of Ontario, and then there's the care and maintenance
Yes,
fund.
I guess that was more, thank you.
Yeah, no, we don't, yeah. So, no,
So
that's
it's
not
covered by
good.
the.
Yeah.
Sandy, I'm a little confused about Cherry Valley Cemetery.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that was a long question. Okay, if you want to say anything, okay.
Give me the question, I'll see if I can.
Well, I'm
I like
just
the
confused
challenge.
because I know that the church was sold privately, right?
Yes.
And
the cemetery.
they looked after the yard when the last people owned it, or not?
The church, it was
Well,
owned by
that
the
doesn't
church.
matter.
The Cherry Valley Church and Cemetery was owned together. And the church sold the cemetery to a private person, to to an editor, yeah, the church and the cemetery. He sold it all.
Okay. One of our relatives was buried there, well, 50 years ago now. I don't know how. Well, no, they've been burying there more.
Oh,
Are they still now?
Oh, they're still burying, because they have they have land there.
Yes.
And they are what we call an open cemetery, an active cemetery. They can sell plots and they do have burials, you know. And the cemetery is active when you can sell plots and when you can bury there. And we don't close it until, and really it's never closed, because you're in perpetuity. So if somebody comes to me, because we do the burials for all the municipality, they contract us to do that, because we have the licensed staff ready on hand to do it. And they'll come and they'll say, we had one last year. This one cemetery, nobody had ever been buried in it for ages, but the person came and proved that they had inherited the rights of the interment down through the will, and they got the will, and so, yeah, we had, there hadn't been a burial in there in like, 30 years, so we got figured out the plot, and then that's another thing. If we do not pick the right area, if we're supposed to be in Helen's plot that she has, and somehow I get it over here, and what's her name? Donna. And I get it on Donna's plot, boy, can I get sued. And I could lose my license as a cemetery. And that's really picking up speed, because people don't want to pay that much for the plots today, right? So we had to get out there, and you prod and you do all you can, and sometimes we don't have good maps, which is really, you just break into a sweat when you're trying to figure out where am I going to do this. We do a little test dig with a shovel, and if there's nothing there, and so anyway, we got them in and they were happy, and but that was years later. We had an episode of that at Glenwood. Wellington Bolter was very active in putting in the fountains and doing all wonderful things there. And he bought this plot, and he had a big acreage there because he had money at the time. So he had a lot of plot. In 1909, 2009, we get an email. Well, I'm the great-great-grandson of Al Wellington Bolter, and he's living in California, and he wants to come and bring the family up to bury them in the Bolton plot. And so we had to say, well, we need proof. We need you either to have the original deed, and how many have an original deed from 1909? Well, they did. So they said, great, and they sent us back a copy, but rarely does that happen. Next, we'd have to go to the wills and have the wills of succession of how we got there, and then we have to have every other living relative sign off on it and the whole bit. And so it's really complicated. But he came, they brought him up, and we had a lovely ceremony, and they buried him, his ashes with his great-great-great-grandfather or whatever. So, yeah, so that's another tricky part of having a cemetery. When people think you can just bury them out there anywhere, and that's no, you can't do that. So, yeah, so Cherry Valley, I think it's DeWitt, is the Latin name of the guy who owns it, so they're burying it, it's an active cemetery. Okay. Yes?
What's your method of finding unmarked graves?
Well, what we do is we go and look at the maps, because sometimes there are hand-sketched maps, and hopefully some monuments around. But in Glenwood, we've got them pretty well. We've got them all mapped because of Roger, because he really did that whole job for us. And we're confident at Glenwood because of Roger's mapping. But sometimes it's a really old mapping, and so we have to go out and just pick, you see here's a monument that's all falling over. That must be the grave. Because they don't tell us in the maps which way, and you said the head this way. They violated that a lot of times. So they didn't have a good compass. So we go out and we prod. We have special prodding sticks, and we prod, and we're trained to prod and hear the sound difference. And then we do a little test dig. And we will do a little dig down, gently down, and we may come across the coffin. And so we say, all right, that's here. Then move over here. And so that's how we have to do it, very, very carefully. We can't disinter anybody. If we do, if we make an accident and our grave digger digs up bones, everything stops. The police have to be called, the public health have to be called, the BAO has to be called. I mean, it's like, and you don't want to do that. And I'll tell you, it's a funny story. Some cemetery did make a mistake, and it's in the day and age when, guess what? You can just take out your phone and film it. So the family filmed it and sent it to the CBC. So, you're very careful of what you're doing now, because you can't hide that. So that went on TV, and you can be fined, it's just not a good thing. So we're very, very cautious about that.
Good point. What about indigenous cemeteries? And like in Grimsby, we had one, and they ended up putting a park, Centennial Park there. And they actually relocated the bones under a survey, under a development they wanted to build next to it. And they put it underneath a cul-de-sac. I think I'm one of the only ones who probably knows where the bones are actually buried now. But they relocated them. Do we have any protocol for indigenous?
There's not any protocol for indigenous that I'm aware of, but there's no set protocol for doing it for a church cemetery. Because it's a little controversial. Years ago, like when the United Church of Picton needed to have more burial ground, they moved the headstones to Glenwood, and they're all lined up on our path down there, and you can walk by them and see them nicely. They're there. And I don't think, they didn't bring the bodies. So the bodies are under the parking lot. Well, people are horrified today that they didn't bring the bodies. So the custom of how do we handle pioneer cemeteries and closed cemeteries and the family plots on farms is very different than back then. They just said, oh well, yeah, they're gone, and so move the monument, just move the monument. So that wouldn't go well today, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be talking with people who were interested in cemeteries today, is because that master plan that we want to develop for the county municipal cemeteries, you can turn the slide so you can see I'm moving around. Thank you for that. We want to do it right with input from the community. We want to know how you would accept something like that? Is that something you'd like to have done, just to remove it and leave the bones and take the headstones? Do you really want us to take the headstones? Do we want to close them at all? But just leave them as little plots that are trimmed, the grass is trimmed 2 or 3, 5 or 6 times a year, and maintained as a site. How do you want to do that? Because it's being done differently everywhere. And so there's no one right way or wrong way, but it's the community, and I think the community needs to give us input. So we're going to have open sessions for you to come in, and we'll discuss, have you give us thoughts on it, and tell us what you think about it. Because we're looking at a pretty large bill for maintaining cemeteries. As you can see there, we've got 79 in that list from 93, and this is the list of these now, that they've got one more coming in, and 15 remaining, and so it's a large task, and it's a lot of maintenance. And what do you do with the monuments when they break? As Chris mentioned, the marble ones can be broken easily. You just see somebody hits them, and that are old, and the lettering is wearing off, and it breaks. Do we want to repair it? Monuments belong to the families, not to the cemetery. You buy them as a family. It's your monument. It's not the cemetery's. So when a monument falls over by nature in Glenwood, it's not our. We don't have to put it back up. We are looking at what we will do at Glenwood with that. When the damage happened, the vandalism, when the 150 got done, the community came forward and donated enough money that we can repair them. The last 20 will go up this summer if it doesn't rain so much. Because we need to have a crane to do it. They're on the steep hills, and we've got 4-foot foundations all dug and ready. The crane came in, put his outriggers out and said, no way. Couldn't get stable, pulled them in, said, call me when you get drier weather. So hopefully it'll come in this year and the last 20 will go up. They're the very heaviest, biggest ones on the steepest of all hills. And the worker safety is paramount, so primary is looked at, and that won't happen until we get safe. And that's why I mentioned hills. Remember I said we showed the picture of the hills? Modern day cemeteries, when you go around and see a cemetery that's been developed and opened in the last 10 or 20 years, flat as a pancake, little bushes around the edge, no headstones up high, all markers flat in the ground, not even, I saw one in, where was I, somewhere down south a while back, and not even one of those little spiky things you could put in, but nothing. They could whip over that and those riding lawnmowers in a shot. They got their grass cut quick. It doesn't cost them much. And that is what's driving that is that long-term maintenance costs. And that's the only thing. But it's not pretty, really. And you get sunburnt to death in there walking around trying to find anybody because there isn't shade anywhere. And so it's not that welcoming feeling that I think you need in a cemetery for the comfort to people who are emotionally healing from the loss. So anyway, so that's how the difference is. But I think we've got character and nature and in our cemeteries, and we're inviting. So that was one of the other things. So that's what we're looking at. Yeah, okay.
Sandy,
Yep.
can I bring something up? When I was involved at Glenwood, we had to request scattering ashes.
Yeah.
And I basically told the people, well, if you're coming, I think they only wanted to put a small amount down on it.
We have a scattering ground now, though.
No, but I mean, they wanted to put it on an existing plot.
Oh,
And I
no.
said to them, we will never know what you do if you're there on the weekends.
Yeah.
And I said to them, if they
Yeah.
wanted it identified and wanted to do something on the monument, then we had to get involved. Now, I don't know, is there any rules or regulations?
Yeah, that's illegal.
Well, I thought that, but how can you stop it though?
Well, yeah, I can't be there all the time, although my husband thinks I'm there all the time. But it is illegal, and so you're right, we can't give them permission to do that. And I know, for those of you who haven't been to Glenwood, and if you haven't seen the pictures of Glenwood, we got a lot of forests that at the back and everything, and it's gorgeous. Yeah, but I can't, we found evidence that people had already come and buried their heads there, and that's truly illegal. If we, at this moment, if we said, yeah, I can, suppose Helen, I know Helen. Helen is a very nice lady. And I said, Helen came to me and said, I have bought a plot and I don't want to move it because I love this site, but it's not in the human and pet burial area, and I want you to put my cat in with me. And I'd have to say to her, I can't do that. Because if the VAO found out, I could lose my license. So I could try to encourage Helen to really give up that lot and go over to the one that's legal, and we'd swap it and with no extra cost to you, and could you go there and we'll really do that. Because I know people want to go with their pets when you really attach them, but really we have to be very careful about that. Yeah.
But one of the challenges is the laws change over time.
Yeah.
Because I know when my mother-in-law passed away 30 years ago, it was a single burial plot. You couldn't add any cremation urns or anything in it. Now you can have four.
Yeah. For a while you even could have 6, but
so the rules do change over time, which is why it's such a challenge to know. Yeah. So you're trying to protect yourself against future changes in the rules.
Yeah, well, I think the pet one will last a long time because it's been very hard to get it in. But the cemeteries have bylaws. We have to write our own bylaws. And not all cemetery bylaws are the same, although there is a template from the VAO that they want you to use. And the part of this issue is that the consumer, you're all consumers, but some of you are more knowledgeable about it than others, because I recognize you're some of the cemetery people, and Helen knows that. But the consumer part of the government is concerned that consumers not be taken advantage of, because you really are really fragile state when you come in to make the arrangements. If you pre-arranged, that's really nice, and everybody knows what's gonna happen, and we have it all down on paper and away we go. But if it's a sudden death, then you can be sometimes convinced to do things you really don't want to do, and it'll cost you more money. And so they're really cracking down on the services, the funeral homes and the cemeteries that push more than they really need. Like vaults, for example, concrete vaults. They were never mandatory in any cemetery. The cemetery could make it mandatory in their own bylaws, but it wasn't mandatory at the BAO level or provincial level. Nobody in the province was required by the Ontario government to have a concrete vault in the cemetery. The cemetery wanted concrete vaults because then the casket doesn't cave in and we don't have these dips. Like Glenwood has lots of dips when you're walking because for us, concrete vaults are really difficult to use because we have a lot of solid rock. And so sometimes when we're digging, can't get down far enough without a jackhammer to get into the rock, and we prefer you not to want us to go any deeper than we have to, because it's a lot more money to go through that rock and jackhammer it. So we don't forbid them, but we don't encourage you to use them because it's not convenient for us on our site. But many cemeteries made it a bylaw in their own and said that to people, but it was never a provincial law for having that. So. And so now that we get the consumer branch involved, and they go around in these secret shoppers, and I'd like to do that job maybe for a while. And be a secret shopper and hear what they tell me. But we have to post our price list on the web. We have a website. We have to be able to give it out freely to you. We can't refuse you the price list. So they're really improving that for the protection for consumers, and I think that's really great. So, yes, okay, so the other thing, and I've got about 5 minutes. That's why you'll have to come to the next one. I had researched food in funerals, and a very interesting topic. And I was going to bake the cookies because in the 18th century in Victorian times, they would have what they call a biscuit. If you were from Britain, they call cookies biscuits. So they would make a biscuit and wrap it up and put little black wax, seal it in a little wax paper, and sometimes it would have the skull. Really interesting, but very good cookies, biscuits. So I was going to bake some of those, and we would do that, but I got sidetracked when my husband got sick this week, so I couldn't bake the cookies. But so the next meeting, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to research it further and bake some of the cookies. But it was interesting that, you know, how we used to have receptions before pandemic, after the funerals, yeah? That came about during the First World War. And it really was set in practice here. And I imagine that other communities, right, you go and have the lunch after, and they what called funeral sandwiches. And funeral, and that was a really set custom. And then it's faded now at the pandemic. It doesn't this often. We're now having people come to the site, not go to a big town hall or a meeting room, but they'll come and they'll bring their sandwiches, or they'll bring more like somebody catering fancy little things, doodads to eat, and we put up a tent for them, and they do it right there at the Columbarium area, or right out in whatever part of the cemetery they're on. Not mosquito season. They don't do it then, and that's a change. And so we've had to, in fact, build and restructure some of our places to accommodate that, because we couldn't accommodate 40 people at the Columbarium area, and they'd be stepping all over my flowers. So we've expanded to where they won't step on my flowers, and so they can come and do that then. Yeah.
We had a situation like that. We have it actually. 2 columbariums put on a hill, as cemetery just like yours, impossible place. And now people are coming and doing what you said. And then one of the rich families in the 1930s built their own vault without telling the board. And it was, next board meeting it was there. And it blocks the most beautiful dead house you've seen in the world. So I contacted the Agreement Authority, could we move the columbarium or the vault.
Yeah.
And you can, but the process was
Oh, yeah. Just
every single owner had to be contacted,
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
had to
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we forgot about that.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah. So no, it's really interesting that how they will change, the
Yeah.
customs will change, and that has been a big change from the pandemic, so, yeah, and they,
What is the signage project?
well, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, that past cemetery advisory group committee recommended that all cemeteries managed by the municipality have similar signage, so everybody would know and prominent by the road that this is where it is. And when you're driving by, this is it's by.
Oh, okay, that's what it is.
So that's the signage,
Got it.
and so they apparently, they started it, and then the signs were a bit late coming in, and then the person who was in charge of that, at the works department, went away, and so it ended there. And so this committee that we started on, where are the signs? Because some of us were the dinosaurs, like me, in there saying, I remember, we did that before, and the clerk went and searched the records, and yes, we've done it, there'd been a motion and then started, and they said, well, where they are, so where are they? So we brought the guy in, and he said, where are they? He said, I don't know, I'll find them, he knew. So off he went, and he found them, and then now they're going up. They hope to have them up by fall, but I don't know if they really did, I haven't checked yet. So, yeah, but so that's, yeah.
And who's Troy Gilmore? That's what.
Pardon me?
Who's Troy Gilmore?
He's the new guy coming. I put him up on a slide so you'd know. He's the new one. Adam was very good. He managed cemeteries at another. Adam Goheen has done it, yes, and he's housing now within the municipality. So he's swapped out. And Troy Gilmore, I haven't met him, but I know when he's arriving. He's on my radar, and I'll be in there right after he gets in there, and they give him his cup of coffee on his way to his desk. I'll be the first one in the chair.
So what is his title?
And I forgot, it's not titles of cemeteries, he gives somebody, administrative.
What's his structure?
Yeah, that's why I get the staff, give me an in on who's doing what, so I can target them right away. You know, you've got to train them up quick. Yes?
The one thing that'd be really nice on the signs is, and this might be coming in the future, maybe done through volunteers, is a QR code.
Oh, yes, yeah,
Attached,
that's,
so that people can get, where it would take you maybe to the municipality, or maybe find a grave or something.
yeah, and that, we're gonna have to talk to them about that, because we have another project that, and John, do you want to do your question, because I gotta have some minutes to talk about my next project.
Troy Gilmore is the new head of operations for the county?
Yeah, that's the title, I guess that's the title. He replaces Adam Golding.
Right,
Yeah,
so, but there is a different staff member who's in charge of the county cemetery?
No. Troy is gonna be the head, and then he'll assign somebody in there to be a contact person for us.
Yeah, I
But
think,
you don't know who that is?
No. He's got to arrive March 12th. Whatever.
So ask March 14th and you can tell him.
I just go in and sit down and say, well, when he gets here, he's got a Swiss customer. So yeah, so then I'll find out. Let me have him for a day. We'll figure out. So another project that we're looking at is what Little Lake Cemetery has done, in a pilot project, is to GPS every lot on the cemetery and that. And I've got a grant, a small grant to get it started here. And I would like to see it done for the entire municipality, because they use the same company of GPS and so it would be a really good match. I picked the company that they like. So you can go with this, and we GPS the four corners. We can make it as a filled lot, somebody that's occupied, the one that's been sold, or an empty one. So it really helps with the administration. And in Glenwood, you wouldn't have to go out and traipse those hills to get to it, you can look at it, and they match it up with Google Earth, and so you can zoom in, you can see the monument, and you can see the monument next to it, and what the trees and everything, and it really is a really great program. And so we'll be starting that this year. We'll be starting getting that sorted out. We would like to have a picture of every monument that's there and have it there. We've already spoken with the programmers, and we will have a spot where you can put, if you came to me and said, Helen would come to me and say, I have a story about my mom that's buried there, and I'd like it included in the program. There'll be a spot in the program where that can go, if the family authorizes it to go there. Otherwise, it will be the other stuff. So to do basics, birth date and things, but the basic stuff will be there, but more can be added, and we're going to build that in. So that's what we'd really like to do. And so I just like trying to get that out there, that we can get more funding, but I think it'll be really a benefit for everybody, for looking for people.
Is that similar to Find a Grave, if they provide a similar?
It is, but it's not. It's not. This is like, you will be, when you put in the name Latchford, Sandra, it'll zoom on wherever you are in the world, if you're on the internet, to where you can see it through Google Earth's eyes. Not the eyes of just, we'll have a picture of the monument there, but I find on Find a Grave, they don't do the back sometimes, and because that was one I had, I couldn't believe it. There was two flat markers they didn't do, and they didn't do the back, so I had to go out, because this person called and said, well, anyway. So I haven't broke tracing around, I got it all, sent it in, but this will do it all. And you get volunteers, that's where volunteers come in. You want to use your camera, boy, we're going to need you to come and take pictures, and we'll get them all in there, and they can be updated over time. But that will be on the file as well.
Sounds like a great thing to identify scorpions involved in for the technical.
My lips is quivering. They're very enthusiastic, which I love. I've got brush they can pick up. Because my back is very young back.
But you could also have future board members there too.
Yeah, I know that. But this is going to have to go, we're going to have to do a trial run. We're going to do a pilot. We picked out a section of one where we're going to pilot it for how we do it and who supervises it. Because in our grade, with 15,000 that's buried there, it's not easy to even to get it in, and because in the old sections they did little higgly. Roger's got it all out. It's in 13 2-inch binders, the maps of every section, and Roger did it all and got it all. And so when you say teenagers, we're still thinking how we can do this and get the files all straight, so you're in the right section, and pinning a photograph to the right one. So we're going to have to work on that. Once we perfect that, I think we can do something.
So what's the name of this initiative that you're doing?
Oh, it's just my initiative. I get these brain cells and I'm GPSing these. I saw Little Lake's example, and it's just record keeping. I don't know what I titled it when I went for the grant, but they liked it, and they gave me some money to start it up, to try and see if we could get it done. So that's, and it's just very in the early stages. Yeah. But Little Lake Cemetery has it, so.
And Little Lakes is where?
Peterborough.
Peterborough.
We're going to keep moving on, guys, and we'll wait for questions at the end. Go ahead.
I got you on next slide.
That's the end. Green burial. That's what our green burial area looks like. And so that's why I think we're popular. It's not cut grass. It's not. You're out there with the jack and the pulpits and the trilliums and the O2 mileage, and we do minimal. We just get you the spot in, and then when we put all the leaves back, and we won't. We don't have any headstones and no flat markers, but we have a field boulder where we have brass butterflies if you wish, and then the information's on the butterfly, and it goes on the field boulder in the center. But it's not required. But we know where you are, and there are, we can locate you because we have metal. We put in little metal pig's paste down in the ground that we know how to locate you if you ever have to. but that's the kind of.
Is it quite a process to get permission? Is it quite a process to get permission to have a natural green burial?
Well, it's the same as if we grew out, well, the only thing that came up here was, you see the trees there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we send our thing in but now they want you to survey it, so I had to have to survey it, the whole cemetery, the law. So we did that, and they want you, it came back and we mapped it all out, and it's higgly-piggly in there, because I'm not gonna cut down a tree to put you. We'll move you over and put the thing over here, and it might have to go like this. And then the next one might have to go like this. Because it really truly is not gonna disturb these trees and tree roots, right?
Because it's natural green burial.
That's right. And then you're getting it really good. The BAO person we had that first time was, so she wanted me to go out and measure the four corners of the ring and to every tree. And I'm like, really? No. We have, no. Which, tell me, and we showed her a picture. I said, every tree? I'll take forever. There's no way. Get the grip here. We won't move them. We'll just put you around in there and but anyway, so we managed to get, she accepted it and we got it. But it's such a new concept. Every tree, I'd be out there next trying to do about 4 of them. Just every tree. Okay. And if it was GPS, we could GPS the coordinates of that. That would have been a lot easier because then we just, and so that was one of the impetus that for doing that. Yeah. So yeah, that was a good story. Every tree. Yeah.
Is it possible now to put urns in above where the casket was?
Yeah, well, you've
Is
got
there a limit there?
If you've got a wild plot, a full burial grave, you can have 4 urns above the coffin, the full burial. Yeah. Yeah. Most cemeteries, some do 6, but I think most of us don't know because you want flat markers, so there's no space to do 6 if you have flat markers. Okay. Yep.
Sandy, who's the keeper of the plots and the information related to, like, say, the Wellington Cemetery?
Wellington is on its own. It has its own board, and you can call Todd Lavender.
Oh, okay, because I know, I think it was Mr. McCall, he.
Yeah, well, Todd will direct you if they're having a change of board. That's a volunteer board run. Cemeteries, that's a volunteer, it's not linked to the church, so it's a volunteer board that runs it, and Todd is the funeral director here, so he's in that.
Yeah.
So some are linked to churches. Glenwood is the rights holders. We are a rights holder cemetery board, so everybody who owns rights at Glenwood is what constitutes our membership, and so we're not linked to any church or specific other group. Yeah.
So the county is responsible for that cemetery, but.
Not Wellington, no.
No, okay.
Because it's still independent.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Wellington's independent. The Anglican Church Cemetery is independent. The Burrs Cemetery is independent, run by boards. Westlake is still independent. Cherry Valley is independent.
So there's restrictions, like, so if it's independent, and they're gonna build around it, actually, there's a huge development coming around it, and I think the developer's looking at reducing buffers. Are there supposed to be, like, because it's independent, is there any restrictions about how close development can go to?
I don't think so, because they're in the new development plans, and we've written letters to the government about this, they're not even including cemeteries as a necessity. So they are not including that there'll be a cemetery in huge subdivision developments. No green space left for cemeteries. So we argued that because, I mean, if in Toronto, if you live in an area and they say no cemeteries, we don't have them here, you have to go further and further, you won't be able to go and visit. You might not even be able to have the ability to go and bury. I mean, you have to just send the urn over or something, because some people just don't have cars and the money to travel.
But that's been the history of cemeteries in Toronto.
Pardon?
That's the history of cemeteries in Toronto.
Well-
It's been that way for.
But not in the new subdivisions. See, they have an opportunity to do
Yeah.
it, and they're not.
They're not, but, you know, that's where St. John's and Mount Pleasant and all of those were built outside of the city of Toronto.
But they grew up around it. And now you can plan,
Yeah.
and they are not planning.
It's good for your
And-
master plan, when you talk about your master
Yeah.
plan, it's good for that to be part of the discussion about
Yeah.
planning these things
Yeah.
into them.
Yeah, and that's what I've already know, I've sent that information to Adam, and then he's gone there, but now, so I wanna make sure Troy gets the same message, that, and then the planners, and I'm going to see them. So, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
And that's just bad planning, to put, you know, like 1,000 houses and nowhere to bury people. And then how can you go and visit it? And you need green space, but it can be a park. Glenwood acts as a park in Picton, for anybody who's in Picton, right? And we got bat houses, and we got all this all these things you can sit and come and have picnics. It's like a big park, but it's also a cemetery. So you can combine the two. If you're smart right at the beginning, and all the planning, it can work really well.
I'm not sure that's smart and.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's something happening. Well, I really hope you'll pay attention to when we get these open houses going. It'll be probably sometime in April, maybe early May, to get you back in and have some discussion. And it's nice to have visitors from away and hear how it goes in your area too. Because I think it's really, we should be working together to try and get this all going together, and what's these policies and what people want and don't want. There's other stuff coming down the pipeline that I haven't even talked about, but I've taken all the time I should and more. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope I see you again.